Welcome to my channel where we question everything. Today's topic is an alternative viewpoint, and I'm going to make a prediction on the military offensive of the Russians in the next couple of months, maybe a year. So let's see what I predicted. Well, I make this prediction because my friend in Panama said to me, hey, put your money where your mouth is and make a prediction and see what happens and see if you are right or not or wrong. And then in 6 months' time, we can see whether you are right. And I'm taking up that challenge and I'm saying, well, here I'm making that prediction. Now, naturally, it's just a prediction based on an opinion or interpretation of the facts that has been presented in the last 10, 11 months of the Russian special military operation and the various speeches that were given and, well, how the battlefield actually developed. And, well, to start off, let's have a recap on how the military operation, special military operation actually developed in the last 10 months. And this is a map that started off in February, and as you can see, all the red areas is where the Russians invaded. Here on the far right hand side, you can see the Donbas Oblast, and then the Kherson, Zaporizhzhia, and Kharkov region in the north. And then we have the attack that went on to the Kiev. That threatening move that the Russians produced. Now, again, what the Russians have done, they have mobilized initially about 150,000 troops with the necessary artillery contingents and logistical support. So not all of these 150,000 men were combat troops. And they spread those forces, well, in the Kiev direction from the north, as well as the offensive against Kharkiv, and both of them later withdrew from the area. And the problem is, I don't know where these troops went. Did they now go to the rest of the battlefront, or where did they go? And unfortunately, there is no information available there. But as you can see, the Russians have basically sacrificed a lot of territory that they conquered in the first couple of days or weeks of the SMO. And slowly they were pushed out of the northern Kharkiv region, but they did conquer or liberate the whole of Lugansk Republic, or Oblast. That's it was still Oblast. No, it was a republic. And unfortunately, half of the Donetsk Republic is still in Ukrainian hands, and that is also for the Kherson region, and the Zaporizhzhia region with Zaporizhzhia city as well. And as the SMO has progressed, basically everywhere the Russians have retreated. Now, I know this is a contentious issues. The pro-Russian commentators don't want to accept that, and they are providing one excuse after the other one, and if you don't agree with them, then, well, in my other videos I've already said that they would sort of cancel you. Well, I don't care much about that. In any case, so as the SMO progressed again, we had the Liman and Isium offensive, and the Russians retreated there. And they lost significant territory. And then later on, we had the withdrawal from Kherson city itself back to the other side of the Dnieper River. And suddenly, the whole area basically was a lot smaller than what the Russians initially had. And I remember still all the bragging done by the pro-Russian commentators on how fast the Russian military has moved and how much territory they conquered, and they were already occupying more or less like 25% of the territory of Ukraine, and Ukraine is a huge, huge country, so that was a major type of advantage, well, not advantage, we would say, achievement. Well, there was a liberation of Mariupol, but that was a necessity. Mariupol is part of the Donbas region, and it's also in the Azov Sea. And from a strategic point, that is very valuable to the Russians. So that was, in any case, a necessity. But the question is now, how did the Russians act? And what was the narrative? Firstly, the Russians usually use the Chechen troops for the urban fighting in Mariupol. And then they use the Donbas militia to do most of the fighting, and the Russians were doing the support. And after the withdrawal, the so-called withdrawals, but you can call them as military defeats on the battlefield, they had to withdraw into certain areas. And they now have established basically defensive lines. And after the withdrawal of from the Kherson city and the Kherson Oblast, everything came to a standstill, and Sorovikin was appointed a new general who made the Kherson withdrawal happen. And my argument is that the initial military planning of Russia wasn't up to standard. Because, well, I know in hindsight is 2020 vision and so on, but no. One has to look at the defined objectives of the Russian SMO. The first one was to liberate the Donbas Oblast republics to their original border. Then there was a denazification, and then basically it was ensuring that Ukraine doesn't become part of NATO. And those were the stated objects. And unfortunately, if you look at the map, that is not what the Russians have done. And I find fault with the military planning, not the political planning, the military planning. And then there was also the incident at Pavlovka, which clearly showed that the Russian command was a little bit uncoordinated. Everybody was doing their own thing and so on. And I believe that when Sorovikin came into command, took over the total command, incorporated the Donbas militia into the Russian army, as well as getting control over the whole battle line. He withdrew from Kherson under the necessary assessment that their troops were in danger and that they won't sacrifice their troops unnecessarily and put the lives of their troops unnecessarily into peril. That's the right English word, harm. Yeah. And we as the Russians, as the pro-Russian commentators, didn't understand that. And yes, I addressed it. And I, on a record, I'm on record basically, that I thought it was a military mistake. And until now, I haven't been actually proven wrong. The point here is basically that if you look at the whole total Russian action, they committed 150,000 troops. Now, a lot of the information I'm going to say now comes from the speech that was delivered by Putin on the 21st of December to the military command. If you watch that speech, I will leave a link to that in the comment section, and you can watch it yourself. Only the first part is Putin, the second part is Sugoi that is speaking. In any case, so let's start from actually what me and my friend always said, and I said it in previous videos as well. One of the biggest drawbacks of the American army and NATO is body bags. And that was the most prominent one in the Vietnam. And that was the turning point of Vietnam, and that is the main reason why America withdrew from Vietnam. Body bags came home, and the American public couldn't understand that and accept it anymore. And then they went on to demonstration, and that's how the Americans got out of Vietnam. Well, my friend told me actually that the Russians, remember the Russians have a very strong feeling about the Great War and the sacrifice that Russia did. And the Great War is referred to the Second World War and then driving back the German forces. And they call it all this up, and it's a patriotic war, and patriotism, love for your fatherland, your motherland, you have to defend it, and so on. And then me and my friend always both agreed actually that the Russians were prepared to lose manpower in order to protect their own fatherland. Yeah, patriotic sacrifices. And if you listen to Putin's speeches, he thanks the soldiers for their duty and their patriotism and their heroism. And he has a lot of, not feeling, but he recognizes what the soldiers does. But he also understands that sacrifices have to be done. And me and my friend always say that, okay, the Russians are prepared to lose manpower. They will say put 10,000 men under the chessboard, and they expect the enemy to put 10,000 on a chessboard, and then they will fight, and the Russians will be prepared to lose all 10,000 men, what the NATO members won't be able to do. And that basically was our assessment at the beginning of the SMO. But unfortunately, that view has changed for me dramatically. Looking now in the reto now, I'll also call examples. The point here is that Putin is not prepared to lose manpower. And that is one of the main reasons why the Russian offense is so slow. And that is why they are doing the artillery attrition warfare and the missiles. And this was confirmed in the speech that he held on the 21st of December. Or the 22nd, when he had the press conference. It was one of those two speeches that he said it. That he said, Russia is moving slowly because a big push will mean huge sacrifices and huge casualties, which would be unnecessary and unlogically. So, that already indicates to you that the Russians will not have a major offensive. They won't do it now. They won't do it for the rest of the winter. They will not do it in the spring. And I think there won't be a proper major offensive coming out from the Russians. What they will do is they will keep on doing what they are doing now. They will still have the artillery duel, slowly grind down the hardware of the Ukrainian forces, like the tanks and artillery pieces and air defense systems and so on. So slowly they will do the attacks from the distance, and then the frontline units will be there in order to repel any attack from the Ukrainian forces. But on the other side, if I were the Ukrainian forces, I would also not attack. I will wait it out. It's a question of who's going to be impatient and who will basically become chicken. Ukrainians will believe that they will wait until the Russians attack, and that's when they will annihilate them. And the Russians say, well, we have all the time in the world. We're going to pick, the words that Putin actually used is like a chicken picks a seed by seed. He eats, one seed and he eats it. One seed and he eats it. One seed and he eats it. So basically that is what the sample that you use. And therefore I don't believe that Russia will make any drastic means in order to gain certain large pieces of ground and try to win the battle and then have an unnecessary large number of casualties. And I can in part agree with that, unfortunately only in part. The problem is here that the Ukrainians still have artillery pieces and they can fire back. So Russian soldiers will also die. Russian soldiers will, the Russian hardware will also be destroyed. Against what tempo, I don't know. That all depends on the military strategies and the situational conditions on the battlefront. But it's not a foregone conclusion on who will win this battle. In the meantime, it allows Western nations, especially America, to send more weapons, and they will send more advanced weapons, like the Excalibur, more artillery pieces. I've made videos about how much the West really has. They would slowly ramp up their production facilities for military equipment, and it will give them time to produce these weapons that are so-called now they don't have. So the longer the Russians wait, the more Ukraine will become armed and better armed. And Russia is also specifically saying, Putin, they are fighting against the West. They are not fighting against Ukraine. So what does Putin really think the West will do? Well, then we have also the so-called collapse of the European economy and America as well. And in the meantime, Russia's economy is doing well. They were shrinking now by 2.5% for this year, and they are moving away and creating other markets. And that's also fine. But time goes on, and then things start to change. And my previous video, I spoke about the Chinese that have a very good expression for the Russian politics, and that is they are doing salami politics, some thin slices. You can see that now also. Previously, America didn't want to send Patriot missiles to Ukraine. Oh, Russia will see that as an escalation and might retaliate and might get involved into the war. Well, they are considering the Patriot, and maybe another 4 or 5 months, and then the first Abrams tanks will enter Ukraine as well, or some of the German tanks will enter. Salami politics, salami, slices, small increments. And if you look at what the Russians have done, is they have employed 9,000 troops to Belarus, and they're now training with Belarusian army. And it's not to, let it make me very clear, it is not to open a second front and attack Ukraine from Belarus. That's not going to happen. Putin, at this stage, is preparing for a possible conflict with NATO. Lukashenko from Belarus has constantly expressed his fear that NATO troops will enter Belarus from Poland, and he needed assistance. And that is where Putin reacted. And they put also S-300 and S-400 systems into Belarus in order to ensure that NATO doesn't get funny and try to enter Belarus from Poland. Because Putin makes provision for the possibility that there might something go wrong and boundaries or red lines are crossed and Third World War will start. That is his intention, why he actually does Belarus. But again, also in the same speeches, again, I can't remember which one now, press conference or the other one, he said that of the 300,000 mobilization troops, 175,000 will not go to the front in Ukraine. They will be held back as reserves, and they will train and do some more training. So that means 125,000 men will go and join the other 150 Russians, plus so it will be 250, 275, 375 troops on the front. That is what the Russians are currently going to field, and which are under the command of Surovikin. Yes, I know, Everybody tells you that the Ukrainian soldiers are dying or are injured by the dozens or by the thousands. And I heard somebody even talked about that the Ukrainian forces are down to 200,000 men. I'm sorry, can't agree with that. Show me the evidence. These little bit of URV photos doesn't mean much. And I've already said that the daily report of the Russian ministry, forget about that. That is also fictional. Because why? Every second day they shoot another Su-25 down. Or MiG-29. Long past the quantities that Ukraine ever had. Well, the other thing is also what the Russians are doing. They are slowly and slowly destroying the infrastructure of Ukraine. And we are talking more, and Putin actually expressed it also in his address to the military command. And that they will disrupt the supply lines and ensure that the Western weapons will not reach the front, or that it will be very difficult to achieve that. And the Russians also have indicated that they will destroy any American weapon system that enters Ukraine. So it's also again clear that Putin will not escalate the war beyond Ukraine. Doesn't matter what Americans or NATO sends. You know, it's like I said, they might as well send you F-16s. Russia will not bombard them in Germany or in Poland. No, because the risk is too high. So even later on, I believe they will, after the Patriots and after the Abrams tanks and so on, then there will be some F-16s, and they will just send more weapons. It will just go on, and Russia will destroy them, and then more, and so it will go on. And I don't believe that the Russian of this special military operation will end next year, end of next year. It will go on for some time. Even if the Russians are moving forward with a major push, and then when they reach the outskirts of Kiev, not Kiev itself, they won't occupy Kiev, but they will go up to the Dnieper River and so on, and then they will go some forces south, cut off the supply lines to the Kherson city, reconquer and liberate the whole of Kherson and Zaporizhzhia, and then go to Nikolaev and Odessa, and basically that's all going to be Russian, as well as the Kharkiv region. If I was a commander, and remember I don't have all the facts, so I would only have to go onto the facts that was available. The Kherson area is very difficult to operate, to supply, probably due to all the hills and forests and etc. So that is not an area that is very well for any battle. But we also know that huge swaths of land was recaptured by the Ukrainians in the Izium-Liman region. Now, based on that, they moved very fast, and they conquered huge amount of square meters, kilometers. And that means for me that the ground is suitable for such an operation. And then if I would have done, and just remember, there is no signs of any Russian concentration of troops or equipment. So it's not that the Russians are preparing for any big offensive. There's no concentrations. But if I was the Russians, I would go and do a blitzkrieg operation in the Liman Izium region, where you have large pieces of flat land. You can move fast over with your tanks and things. You will support it with your aircraft. You will go deep into Ukrainian territory, and then possibly swing north, cut off Kharkov, and then conquer that region, and then split off left and go to the south and conquer the other ones. And then you will stop. And that will be your new battle line. And that will go on and on and on until there's a peace agreement. This is more or less how I would have done it if I was a commander, based on the limited information available. But will the Russian push? I doubt it at this stage. They will rather grind down and pray and build some more missiles, shoot them over, destroy infrastructure. Build some more missiles, shoot them over. One of the things that Putin also have said is that in his address to the military commander is that they know the Russians have learned a lot. They've learned a lot of Western weapon systems. They have also acknowledged the importance of UIV and for reconnaissance. He specifically said that the data received from the UIVs must be electronically integrated in an intelligence network on a real-time basis so that targets can be immediately identified and destroyed. So Russia will also use this time to modify its weapon systems, build new systems in order to adapt to the current situation. And Putin actually said that all this integration of intelligence and command centers, that technology is available and can basically be implemented immediately. So the building of UIVs is on the cards, and it's going to happen very soon. The integration, electronic-wise, is going to happen very soon, and that will change the battlefield significantly. And then one very important thing that he said: the military will get anything it asks. Anything. If the military wants UIVs, he wants 1,000 UIVs, there you got it. You want 1,000 kamikaze dingers, which he also mentioned, there you get it. Open checkbook. Military just has to ask. That is a huge change. That's a huge commitment. And again, Putin also said, we will achieve our objectives. That is not negotiable. Failure is not an option. We will achieve our objectives. And we won't be reckless. And we will modify our army and our equipment. And we will modify our tactics. He gave the military commanders explicit instructions to modify their strategic plans and their training around that and adaptation to the new type of warfare. And another supporting type of information or fact is Russia was invited by Assad in Syria to assist Syria in the battle against ISIS. Russia sent there the S-400s and the other anti-air systems, and they sent some troops and some aircrafts. Never ever has the Russians used the S-400s to destroy an Israeli attack aircraft. So Russia will not get involved in a conflict with Israel. But it will support the Syrian with weaponry to shoot down, but the Syrians must do it. Then we have the illegal occupation of Americans in Syria. They are not supposed to be there. They are an occupying power. They are illegally there and they are stealing Assad's oil. Never ever has Russia supported any action against those American troops. Although it is in its full right to do it. And America will not start a nuclear war if they are attacked in Syria. They will withdraw from Syria, go to the Iraqi border, and just cross that border. But even if Russia would attack those American troops in Syria, the Americans will not react with a nuclear strike or whatever. The consequences are just too high. But both parties are actually refraining from getting into a contact situation. And therefore, I believe also that the Russians in Ukraine will make every effort not to step over the line. And the Americans will do everything in their power not to cross that line. Sending weapons to Ukraine is not crossing the line. Sending more advanced weapons to Ukraine is not crossing the line. Going over the Russian line, the border, that is a red line. Firing missiles outside Ukraine onto Russian forces, that would be a red line. Sending aircraft bombers from outside, from the German or Polish airport to bomb the Russians in Ukraine, that would be a red line. But both parties have shown in Syria that they will not cross that line. And, you know, the Russians went to Syria in 2015, that's 7 years back, and they're still there. And therefore, I believe that the Ukrainian war will also last not 8 months, not a year, probably 3, 4, 5 years, even longer. Because the Russians will move up to a certain point, like I said, the Dnieper River, outside Kiev, and then conquer basically the east. What happens with the rest of them, that's all speculations. I know that Duran had some ridiculous ideas about Poland taking over part of, not even know that, mate. So my opinion at this stage is that what you see now on the map, you see the boundaries, slowly, meter by meter. Well, in the first things, they're not just going to destroy equipment. And by the way, Putin, the question was asked in the conference. He said, Ukraine had a lot of Soviet-era weapon systems. And they were given a lot of Soviet weapon systems from other Warsaw Pact countries. And he said basically Russia has destroyed most of their weapons and those ammunitions are getting sort of done. They've also destroyed most of the Ukrainians' military manufacturing capability, but we know there are manufacturing capabilities in Poland and etc., and Slovakia and so on. And there is an investment from Germany in a Polish factory to produce ammunition and so on for the 155 and the 152 artillery rounds, as well as other systems. But Putin also stated that the Western nations are not running out of ammo or equipment. Now, if you want to believe commentators on the internet, where you have a lot of fake news being spread and propaganda, instead of listening to Putin, well, be my guest. I believe Putin has much more intelligence carrying network and getting the facts right. And I've made some videos about what the capability is of Western nations. Well, the longer the war goes on, the more the Americans are basically held busy in Ukraine. Even if the line of contact is just artillery fire, they have to supply the weapons to the Ukrainians. That will keep them out of Taiwan and out of South Korea. Because America cannot sustain multiple fronts. And while this is happening, the multipolar world will start develop economically and financially and set up all the systems that are required in order to make them not vulnerable to Western and American control. And that will go on for a couple of years as well. There's nothing happening tomorrow. There's nothing happening next year. It takes time with all this stuff. We're talking about 3 to 5 years. The only problem is that the economies in the Western world are not that stable. And it's not only the energy and the war problem, is that during COVID, a lot of money was printed. That money in normal times would have been absorbed by the world. But it was just too much money in too short time that the excess printing of money basically created inflation. And we all know that after 2008 financial crisis, maximum 10 years later, there must have been another crash. But everything was maintained artificially. Money was pumped free into the system, flowing. Huge wealth was created. Well, the chicken is coming home to roost. The inflation will keep on going. It's not a transitional event. But they will survive. And, you know, we also say, but giving all this money, Americans, to Ukraine, oh, it's all taxpayers' money. No, it's not taxpayers' money. That's free money out of the air that was created. Because America can print money. And who pays it? The undeveloped countries and the rest of the world. Even if China doesn't want to buy or sells its stock, its bonds, its American bonds, then I think in Belgium, they have agreements with the American government that they will buy all the bonds, and America will support them. And it's like the Americans print money and sell it to their own banks, or they sell it to others and then they swap it out. You know, it's like a rondom toilet. It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I think the world GDP is like $70 trillion, but the debt is like $280 trillion in the world. Probably mostly situated in, well, China and Japan, but the rest all in Europe. So the Americans can still keep on printing money. And what do everybody always say? That I want inflation. Because inflation is the way that you erode debt. They always wanted it, inflation. Now they got it. So America will print money, spend $100 billion worth of armament on Ukraine and giving them another $100 million for the administration, and just keep on going and going and going. And Americans won't really care about, because they're printing money. It's not that they take their savings. No, they print money, which is paid by the rest of the world. So, sum it up. Nothing is going to happen. No big major offensive. Maybe in the summer, maybe. Putin doesn't want to lose men. Well, sometimes I disagree with that. Sometimes, like I said, you cannot only push a little bit. Because every time you push, you lose a little bit. A little bit. You keep on going. You keep on going. You lose a little bit. You lose a little bit. You lose a little bit. But remember, a dollar is made out of 100 cents. And 100 cents makes a dollar. At the end of the day, you have the same losses. Sometimes you have to commit yourself. And if you have proper planning and put all your forces into power, play, good coordinated strategies, and you push it and you do a blitzkrieg type of operation, nobody's going to stop you. And you will lose men, but those numbers at the end of the day will be less than money, the lives you would have lost by bit by bit, by bit, by bit, by bit, by bit, by bit. So it all depends on what they're going to decide. There will be a downturn in European, American industries and so on, but if something goes wrong there, then the rest of the world will also suffer. In any case, that's my prediction. If you like what you heard, press the like button, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, spread the word. And until next time, cheers.